All right, folks, you are listening to the Yishai Fleisher Show, broadcasting live from Judea, and you're a part of it wherever you are. Shalom and welcome. It's a great pleasure to be with you. And we have a fun show for you today that incorporates all kinds of cool voices that you need to hear if you want to be part of the story of Israel and get the information, not the disinformation. So we're going to have a lot of fun today. Let's start off with one of the important voices, and important female voices as well, and that is a great thinker in Israel, a British journalist who's Israeli, and she has a great understanding about global trends and anti-Semitic trends as well. Melanie Phillips recently gave a speech about the first Saturday people, then the Sunday people, and really the issues of the giving up of identity in Europe in favor of the influx of jihadism. This is an important speech which I think gives a lot of clarity as to what's going on in the world vis-a-vis the Jewish people in that continent of Europe, which she knows very well. Here is Melanie Phillips with clarity as to what's really transpiring out there.
Good morning, everybody. It is really such a great honor and privilege to be here today to speak on a platform of the heroic and inspiring Shurat Hadin. So thank you very much indeed for inviting me. Ladies and gentlemen, what is happening to us in the Jewish world is unprecedented. It is a global onslaught on the entire Jewish world. It is an onslaught that was triggered by the October 7 atrocities, triggered by Islamists who believed and still believe that their moment had come because they had breached Israel's security, hitherto thought impregnable even by them. They believed and still believe that the defeat of the Jews presaged the defeat of the Christians. First, Israel would be destroyed, and then the West. And they still believe that. The crowds on the streets of London and other cities who are demonstrating allegedly in favor of Palestine are actually demonstrating their power over the West, that they feel that their moment has come to finally launch, having launched the final onslaught on the West, which will succeed. These demonstrations are delirious, and they were delirious when they started on October the 7th, before the Israelis had stopped even being slaughtered. They were on the streets of London in a delirium. We are going to win this. This is our final battle. And that delirium continues horribly on our streets because there has been no pushback by government and other authorities. We have seen open incitement against Jews on the streets. We have seen and are continuing to see the most brazen anti-Semitism from celebrities and other public figures, which has become normalized. We have seen and are seeing this steady rise of an Islamic political bloc in Britain, and I'm afraid to say also here in America. You're a few years behind Britain, but I'm afraid it's the same thing. We are seeing an alliance, an unholy alliance between the left and the Islamists, an alliance which has turned language and thought in itself inside out to produce an image of demonic Jewish control over the world. It is as if we are living through a posthumous victory of both Stalin and Hitler. Why has this happened? There are many reasons, complicated. Holocaust guilt by the West is part of it. The idea that they can never again have the reality of the Jew as victim. They have to cast the Jew instead as the victimizer to escape their own historic guilt, not just for the Holocaust, but for centuries of Jewish persecution. We have the rise of identity politics based on the hatred of the Western nation state, the hatred of Western culture itself, which has produced for decades an onslaught by Western intellectual elites on the West's core values. And the onslaught on the West's core values has meant an onslaught on Judaism, because it is Judaism, although Christianity is, of course, the infrastructure upon which the West is based, but Christianity didn't come from nowhere. One could say Christianity was a Jewish sect that got slightly out of hand. The values that everybody in the West holds dear, secular or religious, are fundamentally Jewish values, and we're very shy of saying that. Why is all this happening? Well, I think that the Palestine cause is absolutely central. The Palestine cause, as we all know here, is based on nothing other than the destruction of the Jewish state, but more than that, it is also based on stealing the Jews' own history in the land from them. But the Palestine cause has become the cause of causes in the West, which of course is in the business of destroying its own core values which come from Judaism. No coincidence. In my view, the Palestine cause is a form of holy war, Islamic holy war, and it is a Trojan horse for the Islamization of the West. By adopting the language and the moral inversion of the Palestine cause, the West has bought into the agenda for its own destruction at the hands of Islam. This is a death wish by the West. And if you have a death wish, you cannot fight a death cult, which is what the West is facing in the forces of Islam. It cannot fight it because it no longer knows what it is. The West no longer has the will to defend itself because it no longer knows what that means. And insofar as it ever knew what it means, it has tried to destroy it by telling itself that the West is to be hated. This has created a vacuum into which has marched the Islamists to conquer the West because the West is paralyzed. So what can we do to fight back? We can do a lot to fight back, and we're not doing it. We can do a lot to fight back with a very different strategy. But unfortunately, the Jewish world has never even had a coherent strategy. Until now, the responses of the Jewish world to this, unlike, for example, Shurat Hadin, which I think is almost unique in its proactive, aggressive attempt to fight back to this. In other respects, the Jewish world's responses have been scattergun, not just ineffective, but strategically misguided. For decades, the Jewish world has allowed our enemies to frame the narrative. Our enemies have been able to hijack the language and weaponize the West's post-truth, post-moral culture to push their agenda that Israel and the Jews are on the wrong side of just about everything that is good and right and true. The world has been made to believe that peace and justice in the Middle East hinge on the Palestinians getting a state of their own. Justice for the Palestinians has been deemed to be the issue that drives all before it. By apparently denying that happy outcome, the state of Israel has come to be perceived as the enemy of humanity itself. This is the big lie that we are all up against. But the Jewish world has never identified this big lie as such and has never fought it. It has never told the world the truth. There is no such thing as Palestine. There is no such thing as the Palestinian people.
Wowzers. So simple. There's no such thing as Palestine. There's no such thing as Palestinian people. But Melanie, there is such a thing as a Palestinian Authority. And we created it. And it's in our land. There is a Palestine, isn't there? It's our own handiwork. We created our own enemy. We built it. And so, yeah, there's no historical Palestine. There's no Palestinian people per se. But there is a team that we've empowered on our land. And that is Israel.
The Jewish world has never told the rest of the world that the indigenous people of the land of so-called Palestine are the Jews, that the Jews are the only people who have any entitlement to any of this land, an entitlement based in law, in history and morality, and they are the only people who have an entitlement to all of it. The Jewish world has never said that. Instead, the Jewish world has gone along with the big lie, appeasing it, shaving off its most dangerous edges, but with too many Jews in the diaspora themselves falling for at least part of this lie. But now, ironically, because of this terrible war and this terrible catastrophe that happened to us on October 7, 2023, there is now an opportunity to seize back control of this narrative and reframe it in the interests of both Israel and the truth. Because of October the 7th and these past 2 terrible years, Israel and the Jewish people, I think, have profoundly changed. Israel will never be the same again. The Jewish world will never be the same again. The trauma in Israel will last forever. It has changed the Jewish people in Israel forever. The grief is off the scale. The trauma is off the scale. But out of this terrible thing has come something truly wonderful. It has produced a sense of unity as a nation. We can all see that Israel has fought in the way that it has done because it knows what it is. It is connected to its past. What we have seen is an expression of the indomitable spirit of the Jewish nation. What has been so stirring to me, and I'm possibly to all of you, is what I would consider to be a revival of an ancient, all but buried collective memory. I have been immensely moved above all by the sight of those young soldiers praying with their commanders on the eve of going into the battle in which some of them will lose their lives. I have been immensely moved and amazed by the immense demand fueling now the Israeli economy for the production of tzitzit. Who would have believed all these soldiers, most of whom are secular, have gone into battle wearing tzitzit? These are non-religious soldiers. They are wearing the tzitzit under their armor. They are wearing their collective identity as Jews next to their heart when they go to fight for their people. Because they're not just fighting for their country against an enemy that wishes to eradicate it. That is, of course, true. They are also fighting, in their own words, to defend something else, to defend the sacred history of their people. They are fighting in the honor of the sacred memory of all those ancestors going back into antiquity who kept the Jewish people alive. And now there is a spirit abroad in Israel, which people have not seen before, a spirit among younger people. They will not be diverted from defeating the enemy. It is no longer enough simply to what was called mowing the lawn, to keep the enemy down on the basis that they're always going to be there and we're always going to fight them. No, enough. We will now fight to defeat the enemy because we know that only defeating the enemy is what we should be doing. And there's been a realization that this idea of mowing the lawn, this idea of not going too far, this idea of doing what the world expects us to do, that is galut mentality. That is diaspora mentality. That is trying to please and appease the world. But the world we now understand from what we've been living through and are still living through. The world cannot be appeased. It has to be fought. It has been described, and I think most wonderfully, as a move from Talmud to Tanakh, by which I mean this. The Talmud, that collection of rabbinical ordinances, which justifiably can be said to have kept the Jewish people alive since their exile from the land of Israel, is very much a diaspora mentality. It is a mentality which looks inward, which says we are up against a world which hates us, we have to protect ourselves. The Tanakh is full of stories of the Jewish people of antiquity fighting real battles, killing real people in defense of their nation and their people and their faith. And that is what has to be done. And I see that what we are seeing now in this war that has been fought is the resurrection of the Tanakh Jew, the return of the heroic Davidic warrior. Strength, not weakness. Now, the war is not over, but we've seen that Israel has amazingly become the strongest power in the region, victories that could never have been imagined. So Israel has a lesson too for the West in how to fight an enemy, but it has a much deeper lesson for the West. We know the West needs Israel, despite what it's saying about Israel. The West needs Israel more than Israel needs it for military intelligence, for military hardware, in military intelligence, for Jewish genius. But beyond that, the West needs Israel for the moral and cultural lesson that Israel is currently teaching the West. Look at Israel's birth rate. It is not a small detail. 3 to 4 children per child. It's not because the Haredim are having so many children. You may be either horrified or delighted to learn that the average Haredi woman who was giving birth to an average of 12 babies per woman, is now giving birth to a mere 8 per woman. This birth rate of 3 to 4 children is being fueled by secular people, modern Orthodox people. It's being fueled by the idea that they want to have Israeli children because they want Israel to continue. Why do they want to have Israeli children and want Israel to continue? Because they believe in it, they love what it represents, they understand it represents the Jewish people, they love the Jewish people, they want the Jewish people to continue. What Israel is showing the West is that only by connecting to your past, to your history, will you ensure you have a future. To have a future, you have to want to have a future. The West needs this lesson to survive, but many diaspora Jews need to learn it too, because too many diaspora Jews have drunk the Kool-Aid. Too many diaspora Jews have been seduced by the liberal universalist narrative of the United States Democrats, the United Kingdom's Labour Party, Australia's Mr. Albanese, Canada's Mr. Carney, the narrative of the Brotherhood of Man, Kumbaya, John Lennon's Imagine, a world without religion or nation, a world in which there is nothing to fight or die for. That is the mantra of the modern Western liberal. Israel knows there is everything to fight and die for. Israel is teaching the West that Israel is a nation whose identity is rooted in a history based on the faith of a people in the land. Jews and non-Jews need to understand that this Judaism, represented by Israel, gave the West its civilized values such as respect for every human life made in the image of God, the priority of justice and compassion, moral responsibility. To fight, you need to know and love your identity. Israel gets it. Now, diaspora Jews need also to realize you are not just Americans with Judaism added on. In Britain, they're not just British Jews with Judaism added on. They are part of the British people, you are part of the Jewish people and the Jewish nation, and that should come first. First and foremost, you are Jews. Everything else is secondary. Now, this means a change of strategy completely. It means changing from defense to offense. I don't mean offensive, I mean offense in a different way. Supporters of Israel have always played defense. This means that we all argue on the ground defined by our enemies. We're feeding the Gazans, not starving them. We're not committing genocide or war crimes, we're the victim of these things. Once you're on the ground defined by your enemies, you've lost the argument before you've even started. It's just like, when did you stop beating your wife? We've been answering that question for decades, and we wonder why we have lost the argument. Instead, it means taking the initiative by attacking our opponents and doing so on the ground where their vulnerabilities lie, attacking them on their own territory, telling the Western public directly how their media and governments are lying to them. And that means telling the truth for once about what Israel is. Start telling the truths never told. Address head-on the basic lie of Palestine. Call out Muslim anti-Semitism, a forbidden topic by the Jewish community leadership in Britain. Never mention Muslim anti-Semitism. Islamophobia is the same as anti-Semitism. We're all basically facing the same enemy. Really? What a terrible thing our community leadership has done to us. We should be publicizing every statement. We should be publicizing every single statement that the Palestinian Authority is channeling Nazi tropes of Jew hatred. And above all, we should start, for once, properly promoting the love of Judaism, the love of Israel, and the love of Jewish people among our Jewish young. I don't know what they're teaching them in the Jewish schools, but they're not teaching them what they need to know to fight this properly. The West is beginning to wake up horribly late to the threat of Islamization in its midst. America, where this process is not as far as advanced as it is in Britain, but it is nevertheless making steady inroads, needs to do much more than it has done. In conclusion, Israel is not just holding the line for the West, militarily speaking, in the Middle East. It is battling the very same Islamist forces that are now achieving critical mass in the West and increasingly threaten its identity and way of life. Israel is not the problem. Israel is the West's solution. That is the message that the Jewish world should be pushing at every opportunity to reframe the narrative. telling the West that Israel defeats its enemies because it has a will to live. That is because it knows what it is, it loves what it is. By contrast, the West has told itself it hates what it is, it no longer even knows what it is. This is a recipe for cultural suicide. The West is unable to confront the Islamist death cult because it has a death wish itself. Israel is telling the West, you should choose life, and this is how you do it. In my view, this is an absolutely seismic point in Jewish history. This is the Jewish moment. We must rise to it. I'm Yisrael Chai.
All right, that was awesome. Thank you very much, Melanie Phillips, for helping us visualize the situation, that the dangers and the opportunities of this time. Now, I wanted to help a little bit with understanding where Jewish policy should go. I wanted to help a little bit on the issue of the tensions within the Jewish soul that are happening today. And so I did a fireside chat on my YouTube channel, Yishai Fleisher TV. I did a fireside chat. Literally, there's a kind of fire pit. We light a fire, me and my son, a campfire, and we hang out. And sometimes I also think deep thoughts around there and kind of recorded it. So here is my deep thoughts on the Jewish psyche today, the tension between Jacob and Israel inside of Jewish hearts. Check it out.
In this holiday of Hanukkah, we get another opportunity to think about that light that was generated by the Maccabees 2,000 years ago. That light that we celebrate is that light, not of Jacob, but of Israel. When Jacob is able to transition and be really strong and sovereign. All right, folks, Yishai Fleisher here, and I'm in nature with my kids having some fun making a fire. And we're talking about the tension between something within the Jewish people, actually our very name. See, our forefather, the one that gave birth to the 12 tribes, his name was Jacob. But he had an alternative name, Israel. What is this tension between Jacob and Israel? When do we employ the name Jacob? When do we employ the name Israel? Well, Jacob is given, that name is given to Jacob when he came out of the womb holding on to his brother's heel. The word heel is ekev. So Jacob is the guy who holds on to the heel. That name tells us that what Jacob is about, that name, is dealing with his brother. Okay, fighting with his brother, angling for getting the birthright from his brother, getting the blessings, stealing them away from his brother, as it were. And so the name Jacob is one that bespeaks of being wily, being clever, dealing with a harsh world where his own brother hates him, and where he is meant to be the spiritual inheritor of his father, but there's this brother Esau who's powerful, who's a hunter, and so he's going to have to deal with him the whole time. So Jacob is the name that refers to dealing with the nations. If we kind of make it a little bit larger, it's Israel, it's the Jewish people through Jacob in this world dealing with the other nations. So that's Jacob. Israel is a very different name. Israel means, on the face of it, it means you were able to defeat, you were able to fight man and God, and you were able to be victorious. Okay? The other explanation of the name Israel is Israel or Israel. It's Yashar El, which is straight, which is a non-conniving, non-tricky, non-clever way of operating. It's the way of operating of straight on. Straight on. You're the sovereign. You're the boss. You create the framework as opposed to existing within other people's frameworks. Examples of a Jacob-like political structure for the Jewish people is when we exist in the diaspora. So Joseph in the court of Egypt, that is Jacob, a Jew surviving in the diaspora. Okay? Certainly Mordechai in the court of Achashverosh, and even before that, Daniel in the court of Nebuchadnezzar. So you have these Jews who are smart, who are clever, and understand the systems of the local populace, of the empire that they're living in, and they know how to deal with it. That means that they care about the Jewish people and perpetuation of the Jewish story, but they very much are products of the country, the empire that they live in, and they understand how to move policy in such a way as to protect the Jewish people, and usually how to strengthen that local empire economically, militarily, etc. Okay? But it's a survivalist mentality. Let's call it a ghetto mentality when a Jew is surviving in a host country, and that host may be it's volatile. It may be predisposed to the Jews or may be anti-Semitic. Okay? But so, like, for example, Mordechai, he figures out how to deal with an anti-Israel moment and a pro-Israel moment as well, pro-Jewish moment. Okay, so that name is Jacob. As opposed to that, there's the name Israel. Israel is when the Jewish people are sovereign, when the Jewish people are on their land, when they are united, the whole peoplehood and all the tribes, and we're in our land, and we're the bosses. We're the spoken language. Hebrew is the spoken language, and we are in control. We're going to get to this in just a second. This dichotomy is very pronounced in the Bible because at the very moment when Jacob gets his name, both times, the Bible says that God basically says to Jacob, okay, your name was Jacob, from now on your name is Israel. And yet the very next verse, the name Jacob is employed, and not the name Israel. So we see that it's not that the Bible is not telling us the truth. The Bible is telling us that the plan is for Jacob to become Israel. But it's not that simple. It's not that simple to bring Jacob, the diaspora Jew, out of diaspora and into a redemptive moment, a moment of sovereignty, okay? It's not so easy even for Jacob to become Israel. It's not easy at all. And we see that in the Bible, especially in the book of Genesis, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jacob gets this name Israel, but he's not easily becoming that. And many times he's referred to as Jacob, and only sometimes referred to as Israel. Usually when he has big moments, big family moments, big moments of strength, he is called by the Bible Israel. Okay. Now, throughout time, the Jewish people are constantly in this battle to become Israel again, right? Jacob is the Jew who survives in the diaspora. Please don't misunderstand. I'm not trying to minimize the name Jacob. Not at all. Jacob is very important. Surviving as Jacob is very important. And it took a lot of great people to be able to make it throughout history as Jacob. But to become Israel is not easy. And that is what we are certainly shooting for, gunning for, because that's the bigger vision. I'll give you an example. When the Jewish people come back from Egypt, we come back with Moses and then Joshua into the land. Well, at first, we're not really Israel. We're divided tribes, all trying to find their inheritance, fighting against the Philistines, who are really the controlling power in the land. And so the Jewish people are still under the thumb of the Philistines, still divided. And in the time of Joshua and the judges, there really was no central place either. That central place for a long time was Shiloh, but that was not permanent. That still was very much Jacob in his synagogue in Maryland or Florida, wherever it is. We had a central place in Shiloh. But that does not mean that we were actually settled in the land. We were not yet settled in the land. We didn't have Jerusalem. We were not united. The first Israel, the first person who can have the real name of Israel is King David. King David is the first Israel because he actually unites the tribes, kicks out the Philistines, defeats them, makes the borders what they're supposed to be, and makes the land, the Jewish state, strong. So the first person who can really be called the real Israel, the first Israel in this world, is actually King David. King David is the first person to really earn that name properly. It's fun to be out here in the land of Israel, in this temperature. It's cold outside, and to have this fire, hang out with my son a little bit. And my son's name is Israel. And we named him that because he represents, we hope, that Israel, the Jewish people, sovereign and strong on their land, united and serving a one God, that when you have all those things, you are called Israel. Throughout time, there were other efforts to become Israel. Another great moment where the Jewish people really became Israel was in Hanukkah. We kicked out foreign rule from this land. This is in the beginning, middle of the Second Temple period. and we pushed out our enemies. We reunited and cleansed Jerusalem. We got our peoplehood together in this land. That was the Maccabees. That was Hanukkah. And again, we got that proper title, Israel. So today, we're still struggling between Jacob and Israel. We are now back in our land in this third commonwealth. And remember, it's so important to always talk about Israel being the third commonwealth. It's absolutely imperative that when we talk about Israel, we should say Israel, the third commonwealth. Because the minute you say the word third commonwealth, you're already telling everybody, you know, we've been here before. This is not a Johnny-come-lately thing. We weren't born in 1948. We were born a long time ago. Our nation was born a long time ago. And our freedom in this land and our sovereignty in this land was extended 3,000 years ago and 2,000 years ago. And now we're back. But as we're back, we're still very much struggling to be Israel, because in many ways our policies are very Jacob policies. What do I mean by that? I mean, look at what happened in Gaza. October 7th was an opportunity to cleanse the land from jihad. It was an opportunity to unite our land. But instead, that's not what happened. We only got part of Gaza, and even that is not a real sovereignty. Hamas is still there. And so therefore, we didn't use the opportunity fully, and we went back into a mode of bringing the other nations in. And this is very un-Israel. This is very Jacob. Jacob is kind of used to the idea of having big empires control us, and that we're not really the sovereign. We're not the boss. And our behavior is also Jacob, because it's not exactly clear. It's a little wily. It's a little tricky. You know, yes, we fought this battle. Yes, we want to get rid of Hamas. And yes, we want to control Gaza on the one hand. But on the other hand, we're allowing some kind of multinational force to come in to rule Gaza. And we didn't get rid of Hamas totally. And so therefore, this is a kind of, you know, not the straight and clear policies of an Israel which rules its land. And so the transition is still being fought. That transition is still being fought. We're really, if we would be likening ourselves to the time of the Bible, we'd be in the time of the tabernacle in Shiloh and the other places that it stood, where it wasn't fully formed. The nation wasn't really united. The tribes weren't united. We didn't have a Jerusalem. And so today we have a Jerusalem. Half of it is in the hands of our enemies. We're not really united. We're very divided. Philistines try to control our land. We have a big international presence trying to control us and not letting us really rule this land properly. So we're very much still in Jacob. And we need a process of getting towards King David. We need a process of getting towards King David. You know, Benjamin Netanyahu was once quoted in an interview. He said that his favorite character was Saul. And Saul, the first Jewish king and a great man, was also a man who could not defeat the Amalekites and ingratiated himself to the Amalekite king, which was a big sin. And that is still the posture that we take here in Israel. We're still trying to ingratiate ourselves to the empires instead of realizing that we're supposed to be the at least local empire, and certainly the empire of consciousness and empire of spirituality. The way we're going to know that we got there is when we see a united Jerusalem, when we see united tribes, when we see a more strong policy, a policy of clarity. We have not created a policy of clarity vis-a-vis Arabs that live in this land. It's certainly not a clear and united policy. It is a policy that has a lack of clarity. It has, isn't that fire beautiful? We allow some to be citizens and others not. We allow them not to go to the army, which is a mistake. And basically, we do not force them to be loyal citizens. They have parties that call for the destruction of Israel. And this is very Jacob-like. It's as though we think that we're existing within their framework. And that's the hallmark of being a Jacob, where you're existing in the diaspora, in the empire's framework, and not in your own framework. That you are not the controller. You are not making laws that make it clear that we are the sovereigns in the land and that we're the bosses. Think King David. If you want to think real Israel, you got to think King David. He's the one who really understood how to do it right. In this holiday of Hanukkah, we get another opportunity to think about that light that was generated by the Maccabees 2,000 years ago. That light that we celebrate is that light of not of Jacob, but of Israel. When Jacob is able to transition and be really strong and sovereign. And that sovereignty, by the way, that strong sovereignty didn't last too much even in the Maccabean times. It went quickly, it went into being Jacob-like, and we invited an empire, the Roman Empire, to take charge around here. And see, that's another example of Israel losing itself and becoming Jacob again. The 6-Day War was very much a moment where Jacob was able to turn into Israel. But we didn't take that moment fully. In fact, we instantly went into this mode of like, can we give this land away? Can we give it for peace? Because we're existing in the framework of the Arabs. We're just a small country. And we even became smaller. Israel does not allow itself to become smaller. Israel doesn't give up its land. Israel doesn't think of himself as locked in to the framework and foreign empire. Quite the opposite. Israel thinks of itself as being powerful. Israel thinks of itself as properly large, as correctly belonging to its land. Not asking for the UN to give it rights, not asking for recognition by other people, although that's appreciated. Okay, recognition is appreciated, but that is not what we depend on. We depend on our historical rights, on our God-given rights in this land, and this is the process that we're trying to get to. We're trying to become Israel. And that's also true, by the way, it's true on a national level, as I'm explaining. It's also true on a personal level. You know, on a personal level, do we, as individual Jews and as individual lovers of Israel, are we still very much locked into, even in terms of our explanations, into a kind of system as though we're trying to prove, like, for example, people come on Piers Morgan and they're trying to prove that Israel's fighting a very moral battle. You know, we're very moral. You know what? When you're the sovereign, you don't have to prove that you're fighting a moral battle. You say, listen, this is what they did. We will not allow such things. We have zero tolerance for such barbarity against our people. And so therefore we're going to fight it. And then we're going to clear out the jihad and hold on to this land. That's what Israel would do. But we slip back into Jacobness. I want to leave everybody a blessing here, that we're able to transition between Jacob and Israel. And I'm not dissing Jacob, and I'm not dissing diaspora life. I think that it is very, very important that we were able to traverse 2,000 years of exile and do it well and develop the host nations at the same time. I think that's part of it. I definitely think that's part of it, and I'm not dissing that. But I also think that the time has arrived to flip that switch and to be like, we are Israel, and we need clear policies like Israel. We need to make clear vis-a-vis the Gentiles in our land, vis-a-vis the identity of this land, vis-a-vis the spirituality of this land, vis-a-vis who gets to have a spiritual site on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Well, you know, when you're Israel, you do not have a big Muslim site on top of your holy mountain, which is the root of your identity. No, you certainly do not. We got to figure that out. So we're still working very much on that transition. And as I begin, I want to bless everybody that we're able to go through that transition, because the time has come to be Israel. The time has come to be a big Israel and to be Yashar El, not crooked and clever, not using arguments to sway the international community, but actually to be the framework, to be the Israel, to be the sovereign, maybe to be the local empire, and certainly, as my friend Rav Mike Feuer coined, an empire of consciousness or an empire of spirituality. That is what Israel is meant to do. Let's hope that this light of Hanukkah will give us that strength, B'ezrat Hashem, with the help of God, to come through and to give birth to the consciousness of Israel, of Yisrael, of Sarita im Elokim v'Anashim v'Tochal, that you were able im Anashim v'Elokim Tochal, that you were able to fight with both man and God, and come back to this land, and also to be Yashar El, to be straight to God. And may Hashem give us that consciousness. And of course, let's get back to the idea that consciousness was first really housed and solidified and embodied in the person of King David. And so something that I could say to both Christians and Jews and others around the world, which is, do we not want to see the resurrection of the house of David, the rebirth of the reestablishment? I want to use language that we Orthodox Jews can live with. We want to see the reestablishment of the house of David, and I think that's something that people around the world understand. That we're looking for that rebirth of the house of David, and that rebirth of the house of David, that reunification of Jerusalem. Another way to say that is Yisrael, is Israel.
This is Yochanan from Germany. Don't worry. God bless you. All the best. Have a l'chaim. Yishai Fleisher will be right back.
All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed that fireside chat of really thinking about what the Jewish soul is up to these days and that transition that we need to get to. Now, we have a special time right now. It's the end. It's post-Hanukkah. It's the global holidays are upon us, what they call in America season's greetings, a new secular year. And at the same time, we're still reading the Torah portion that we read every single year. And that is right now the story of Joseph revealing himself to his brothers. And then beginning the long effort to bring the Jewish people into Egypt in order to save them and in order for the story of the Exodus to unfold. And Joseph, what he had to do was he had to bring down his father and the rest of the family of Israel down to Galut, to exile, to diaspora. And therefore it's going to be his grandson, Joshua, who's going to bring the Jewish people back home. Because somebody had to fix that sin. Because it's a sin for Jewish people to be exiled from their land, or it's a result of a sin, maybe more correctly. And so Joshua's going to bring the Jewish people back home. But Joseph, in this week's Torah portion, brings us to diaspora and to exile. Sometimes we still have exile thinking. And we have a special guest today on the Yishai Fleisher show. And that is the great Jonathan Pollard, who spent more than 30 years in American prisons for giving information to Israel for vital to its security. And Jonathan Pollard recorded an audio about the situation down in Gaza and the effort to make Israel pay for the cleanup and Qatar's involvement and the issues that Israel faces down in Gaza. Here's our special guest, Jonathan Pollard.
Hi, Yishai. This is Jonathan Pollard. When I first heard that the Qataris were refusing to help repair the damage in Gaza, which they cynically said we'd caused, I had a sick feeling that we were going to get stuck with the bill. And that's exactly what's happening. From what I understand, this arrangement was put together with the help of Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, who sold the idea to President Trump. And the message from him came as a direct order to Bibi. The way this is going to work is that Bibi will try to present the camp we're initially going to build for displaced Gazans as a way of, quote, protecting them from Hamas control. But in reality, at least 80% of these innocent Gazans are hardcore supporters of Hamas, many of whom stormed across the border on October 7th to rape, pillage, and burn everything they could get their hands on. And they all know that with Hamas refusing to disarm, they'll all eventually fall under their control once again as a result of the ISF's refusal to forcibly disarm Hamas. That's the International Stabilization Force. So what this means is that we're going to build a city for these Hamas supporters at our expense and feed them. Hamas, Turkey, and Qatar must be laughing themselves silly at our absolute stupidity. The question we have to answer right now is whether or not we can stop this process before we're actually required to rebuild all of Gaza. Bibi, as is his way, will try to sell this new Gaza city in Rafah as a one-off that will keep these Gazans away from Hamas, but that's a lie for two reasons. Firstly, these, quote, innocent Gazans are already hardcore supporters of Hamas that we're going to get stuck housing and feeding. And secondly, once we build this, quote, freedom city, end quote, we'll be on a slippery slope that may very well end with us paying out billions for the entire reconstruction of Gaza. And let's be clear about the fact that Bibi is so compromised and beholden to Trump that he'll do whatever he's told to do. The only thing we won't see him doing is basically bowing and saying, okay, I'm on it. There's a slight possibility of us being able to stop Bibi from agreeing to this raid on our treasury. But that will require the Knesset, and especially the Likud, to finally draw a line and warn Bibi that if he agrees to pay to rebuild any part of Gaza, for whatever reason, he'll be removed from office. Personally, I can't see this happening. Shas and the Haredi political leadership are bought and sold, and they'll always agree to back Bibi as long as he keeps their Bocharim out of the army. Smotrich and Ben Gvir will certainly fall in line behind Bibi once he gives them an acceptable payoff that they could present to their followers as basically Hanukkah geld. And the Likud, please, I won't waste my time playing the part of a latter-day Diogenes looking for an honest Likudnik with a backbone. No, we the people have to say quite clearly that if Bibi is going to spend our tax money, it better not be for rebuilding what Qatar, Iran, and Turkey caused to be destroyed. If anything, the billions should be spent on making us militarily self-sufficient, on rebuilding our frontier communities destroyed during the war, and on providing whatever it takes to help rehabilitate our brave soldiers who have been permanently disabled due to the treason of our generals and politicians.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. That was very special for our audience. I really appreciate that. And speaking of special people, we have our very own special Ben Bresky, who is going to talk to us about a very special topic, and that's dinosaurs in the land of Israel. Something that issues that you wouldn't think kind of come together, but indeed there are remnants of dinosaurs in the land of Israel. So I'll let the great storyteller Ben Bresky tell us that great story.
Is that a dinosaur? Here in Israel? Well, actually, it's what researchers believe to be a Struthiomimus, which is a... Excuse me, I'm trying to do a podcast here. Thank you. Anyways, Professor Moshe Avni-Melech identified the dinosaur tracks found in Beit Zayit to be from the genus Struthiomimus, or ostrich-like. These two-legged lizards lived a long, long time ago, back when Beit Zayit was more swamp-like, and their footprints have been fossilized. I've been to Beit Zayit and seen them. They're the first and only dinosaur fossils found in Israel and in the entire Near and Middle East. No more than 5 other such fossilized dinosaur tracks from this period have been found anywhere in the world. It all started when the Schwarzwald family wanted to fix up their backyard and found over 200 three-clawed footprints of a strange ancient creature. The weight of the dinosaur was estimated to be between 150 and 300 kilograms, and its height about 2.5 meters. That was back in 1962, and Professor of Paleontology Moshe Avni-Melech published dinosaur tracks in the Lower Cenomanian of Jerusalem. And a couple years later, a follow-up called Dinosaur Tracks in the Judean Hills for the Israel Academy of Sciences and Humanities. I want to talk about the history of Beit Zayit, but first a little bit about the professor. Born Moshe Konigstein in Warsaw, Poland, he earned his degree and then served in the Polish army during World War I. He helped form a Zionist group in Warsaw and taught Hebrew. That's when he changed his name to Avni-Melech. He made his way to the land of Israel via Lebanon and eventually got a job at the Department of Geology at Hebrew University in Jerusalem. Beit Zayit was founded in 1949. The closest established community was Moza, which is mentioned in the Bible. Archaeological remains have been found there dating back to the Israelite period and Second Temple period, and the region is noted for the many freshwater springs in the area. Modern Moza was founded in 1894 by the B'nai B'rith organization. Today, it is part of the Mate Yehuda Regional Council, which also includes Beit Zayit. But back in the early days, when the State of Israel had just been declared, the Jewish pioneers had to rough it in what was called the Jerusalem Corridor, which connected the capital city to Tel Aviv and other coastal population centers. Without a normalized civilian population, the surrounding Arab armies would have overrun Jerusalem, as they attempted to do in the War of Independence. And so immigrants from Yugoslavia, Egypt, and Romania settled in Beit Zayit. They came from different backgrounds, but were united in a sense of building a Jewish homeland. First, they built houses, chicken coops, and established a moshav, an agricultural settlement where they worked the land and raised their families. Fast forward 13 years later, and the Schwarzwald family was getting help from friends and neighbors clearing and preparing their backyard. The news reported the incident as follows from August 1962. The rocks crumbled like cake. From under, a layer fell to the ground. About 20 centimeters below, a surface of smooth stone was discovered. When the water level above this surface was cleared, their eyes were filled with a sense of wonder. An accompanying photo was printed of Shulamit Schwarzwald kneeling near her family's shed and pointing at the discovery. The man credited with actually discovering the footprints was Beit Zayit resident Mordechai Sofer. A field guide and researcher, it was he who identified them as dinosaur tracks and notified the experts. Mordechai Motka Sofer was an interesting person. Born in 1931 in Krakow, Poland, as Mordechai Schreiber, his family moved to Tel Aviv when he was a baby. Much to his father's chagrin, he joined the Lehi, Lohamei Herut Yisrael, the Fighters for the Freedom of Israel. This was the underground organization started by Avraham Stern, dedicated to pushing the British out of Israel. Among their tactics was sabotaging the railroads used by British troops. Sofer was 16 years old when he was arrested for participating in an operation. He was sent to Jerusalem Central Prison and then Atlit detention camp, and finally released upon Israel's independence. He served in the Israeli Defense Forces, where he focused on geography and later studied geography in university. Sofer married Miriam, a fellow Lehi veteran who had participated in breaking out Jewish female prisoners from the British Army's Bethlehem Women's Prison. The couple moved to Beit Zayit, where their children were born. Sofer dedicated his life to tour guiding and researching the land of Israel. Today, there is a street in Jerusalem named in his memory. And also today, you can visit the dinosaur footprints in a park, which now features a replica of what the Strathiomimus probably looked like. On anniversary celebrations for the founding of Beit Zayit, there have been dinosaur-themed decorations. One year, a dinosaur song was performed, and a park with a dinosaur statue for kids dedicated. This has been a moment in Jewish history. I'm your host, Ben Bresky, and for questions or comments and past shows, you can check out benbresky.substack.com. Subscribing is free, and donations are appreciated. Thank you for listening, and shalom.
All right, that was awesome. Ben, thank you so much. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you to my team, which includes Yo, and David, and Moshe, and Yona. Woo, we got a lot of people on that team. And Tabitha, of course. A lot of people get the show out. They let the lead out. The lead in this case is the blessings of the Jewish people from the land of Israel and trying to broadcast Israel to the world. And of course, you're a part of it wherever you are out there in the world. We want to thank you so much. We want to remind you that there's great ways to support what we do. Fightforisrael.org, fight4israel.org, and also buymeacoffee.com/Yishai. If you love audio, MP3, if you love podcast in the original meaning of podcast before it also came to mean video, please write me an email, yishai@yishaifleisher.com. Just say, yeah, I need it in audio. Just write that in the subject line. I need it in audio, and I'll know that it actually makes a difference in your life. I want to send you blessings from the land of blessings, from the state of blessings, from the capital of blessings, and that's Eretz Yisrael, Jerusalem and Hebron and the other holy cities. I want to ask you for your prayers, and I want to send you back prayers, blessings, and love from this good land. We shall overcome, and great things are coming through the channel of Israel to the world. All you have to do is just stay part of the story. I'm blessing you to be strong, to stay part of the story, and to feel that God's face is in your life and that He's letting you be and feel that you are part of the story. God bless you wherever you are. Lots of love, lots of good things from the land of good things and the land of Yerushalayim. God bless you, and shalom.